Hey, useful content creators. Before we get into this week's podcast, I want to thank you for being faithful listeners to the podcast. I appreciate that so very much. And I want to ask you a small favor. If you like the podcast and it's been helpful to you, it's given you useful content, could you please give it a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify? I'd appreciate that very, very much. Your voice makes the podcast more credible and helps me to reach more business owners to help them with useful content. Thanks. Let's jump into the podcast now. Long form video is the new way to create almost unlimited content for your business. But how do you turn that long form video into relevant content that will feed every single marketing channel relevant to you? Today in our lesson, we're talking video podcasting. Should you have an interview podcast or go solo? How often should you publish your podcast? And how do you repurpose a big, in-depth piece of video content into smaller, relevant pieces of content that will work for you? Here we go. Teaching you to make useful content so that you can build long-term relationships with the people that matter to your business. Hello and welcome to the Useful Content Podcast. And today we have a brand new teacher in the Useful Content classroom, Rich Cardona. Hi, Rich.
What's going on? I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me, man.
Great to have you on, man. You've been on LinkedIn with me for a little while, and I think I inserted myself into the middle of your journey, ending up where you are right now, running this video podcasting agency. Could you tell the people about what you do and how you make useful content for your clients?
Absolutely. As a lot of us know, you have to scale your content in order to scale your brand, and that's exactly what we do. We try to do it through video podcasting, which is a way to just multiply all the effort that you need, but boil down into maybe a 1-hour show, right? So we try and multiply the content. That way you can multiply the touches and the places you can show up and do it across all the mediums that actually matter, which are obviously, a written medium, video medium, and then the audio medium, which are 3 totally different audiences. So we try and cater to all your audiences. And that's the purpose of a video podcast. And that's how we'd love to help people.
So, I mean, when you think about how you repurpose your content, particularly from a video content perspective, starting video first, because that's what you do. I know that you ran a video agency before, video production agency before, and you
Yes.
transitioned into video podcasts. So what caused you to change from that into video podcasting?
Oh man, that's a great question. I've legitimately great question. No one has asked me that. I think I was doing a lot of talking head content for CEOs, and I really enjoyed that. And I call it a show up and shoot model, where I would travel to you, and I'd be like, okay, let's bang out. In the next few hours, let's bang out. 40 something pieces of content. So at 3 pieces of content a week, you're good for 3 months, and you don't have to see me for all that time. And I like that model a lot. And we will rarely still do that. But what I realized was, you're just going for the quantity at that point. You're just kind of trying to get your hook. You're trying to get the meat, and you're trying to get, the CTA in the end, and you're trying to do it all in 60 seconds or less. And as we know, even though you have up to 90 seconds on a lot of these short form platforms that are specifically platforms that cater to short form, it just gets less and less. It's like, dude, you need to be interesting 0.5 seconds into that thing, whatever it is, because everyone's in scrolling mode, right? So I had been a podcaster, as you are, and I was a fan of podcasts. And I just realized that there was just so much more meat in long form content. And I'm like, I do it. Some of these people are just fantastic storytellers. Like, why are we kind of shoving them into a corner just because that seems to be what's hot right now? Podcasting has been growing steadily year over year over year. So the pivot just became as a way for people to not have to rush and just cater to algorithmically driven platforms, and just, and to just be themselves, show up as themselves, and really, really just tap into, I think, what they want to talk about without having to be in a hurry. And I think that's the biggest value.
Yeah, I like that. I know I hadn't thought of that before. Like, there is a big difference between trying to create content and your focus is short form as opposed to
Mhm.
creating something that is a block of knowledge that is deep and then extracting things from that and creating shorter form content. When you talk to people about those two choices, because I know now you don't necessarily promote the first part of it anymore. It might still happen. When you talk to people about those two choices, do you ever come to the point where saying that, okay, this person really needs to do the short form thing and this person needs to do a podcast? Or do you always say a podcast will work the best?
Uh, that's that's another good one. So short form, as much as I do not like short form, I do believe it is a requisite, and I do believe like there's only so much you can repurpose. You can get a ton from a 30-minute or hour-long podcast, but sometimes you just have those quick hitters. Like here's 5 websites that you could use to repurpose your podcast audio. You don't need to make a podcast about that, right? Like you could do that in a second. So if it's quick hitting kind of brand nurturing or audience nurturing content, yeah, do the short form. And you don't even need someone like us to do that, right? Like you could literally just use your phone, set it on hands free, and do your little reel and do whatever you got to do. So I don't try and push them into either way, but if people, I would say the people that we want to work with the most want to give the most to their audience. And I believe it's just kind of conceptually inside them. They're teachers. You know what I mean? They're authors, they're speakers. They love being on stage for 40 something minutes. This is a mini keynote. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I could kind of tell my radar goes to which way they want to go. And if we don't want to do the short form stuff, we have plenty of people we could refer them to. But I definitely try and be a little bit more attentive. And I will tell you this at the beginning of every call, discovery call, I will say here's our agenda. We're going to end up in one of 3 places. I was like, one is we're going to really like each other and we're going to work together. I was like, 2 is we might like each other, but we might not be the right fit. And I could refer you to someone else who's competent. I always say competent as a way to be like, that doesn't sound sexy. So I say that. And then the third one I say is, you might realize like you absolutely have no interest in doing video or a video podcast. And I was like, and that's good too. But either way, if I help you to arrive at any of those conclusions, it's a win because
Mm.
at least it shows like I'm trying to give them something, even if it's not with me. So I never try and push it, but that's a very good question because the people we want to work with and want to work with us usually enjoy the kind of length of this kind of style of content.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm a big advocate for doing that these days. I had my stints on TikTok and I grew that real fast, but it really battered me, if I have to say that. Yeah, it's a hard thing to have to think about content every single day. So I guess part of what you're doing for these leaders, these CEOs, and these people who run businesses is that you're making it so that they don't have to think about content every single day, that they could just make something and then take that and make a ton of other things from it.
Absolutely. So I think like it's Alex Hormozy talks about this a lot, which is hook, retain, and reward. So HRR. And if you do that for short form content, I could say to you, let's just make something up off the spot. Okay, I'm looking at a note right here on my desk from one of my daughters, and it says, "I love you, Dad." And I'll be like, "Here's why I keep family pictures in my office," and I could say something along those lines of it because during the workday and right before I go to bed and right when I wake up, all I'm thinking about is my business. And sometimes I need to be reminded of what's most important to me. And I just go, be like, here's how you can do that too. Maybe that's it. But like hook, retain, reward, that's short form content. And I can make that into 60 seconds or less. But a podcast, if you do it right, and you're doing it perfectly, by the way, is like, it's that just a bunch of it and it adds up to 30 minutes. So it's the same kind of concept as long as you're bringing someone on a journey and it's not just people just casually talking about nothing and like trying to arrive to a conclusion. You are asking right now, this is great for your listeners, by the way. You're an excellent podcaster. You're asking very specific questions that you're going to get very specific answers. And the only thing I could do better for you is repeat the question when I answer it to
Yeah,
make
yeah,
it seamless. But anyway, that's all it is, man. It's like the same thing, just in a longer format. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
We're going to get into video podcasting specifics, but there's one more thing I wanted to get from you. I was listening to one of your videos and or your podcast, because I know you've done 2. You've sunsetted 2 of them,
Yes.
I think,
Yes.
I think you're currently working on releasing this new one, which is like a local business type of
Yep.
podcasting, video podcast.
Mhm.
But you almost quit at 54 episodes in.
Oh, yeah.
Is that something specific to you that happened to you, or do you see podcasters quitting around that same time too? What's the stat on that really?
Well, I mean, you know the deal, man. A lot of people don't make it to 7, but I think nothing really happens until 50. And now I tell anyone that we work with the same thing, unless we're taking over an existing podcast. So I think after 50 episodes is the only time, and this goes for like YouTube as well. Like if you're making YouTube video, any long form content, you're not going to have the requisite data points until you're there. Like you just won't, man. Like you won't be able to see, like especially on podcasting, on Apple Podcasts. You know, you could go in and you could look at listening percentages per episode. I mean, you could see, you could look on other analytics and be like, wow, this episode took off for some reason. Oh, it's because I'm talking about money, you know, and these ones about self-improvement, no one cared about. Like maybe I need to do less of that. Now, the problem is if you don't enjoy making some of that content that did better than you wanted to, then you might be in a weird situation. But otherwise, I would say you need as much data as you can. We just signed someone, and we do 6 months agreements. We just signed someone, and he's like, "Can we just do a year agreement?" I was like excited. At the same time, I'm like, "Hold on, hold your horses. Like, let's see how it goes. What if in month 4 you're not feeling it? You know, to your point." And he knew. He's like, you need to do something that long in order to kind of actually see what happens, right? And I completely agree. You probably know that your first episode and your second episode, you were not hosting the same way you are now. There's also a way of hosting, a vibe, the way you interact, the types of questions you ask, and all that just gets refined. If I started lifting weights tomorrow and I had never lifted before, the way I lift after my 52nd workout or 50th workout is going to be different. So I wanted to quit. But like I also had absolutely strange, very ambiguous expectations. I don't know what I expected, but I knew I enjoyed interviewing people, and that's what kind of kept me around. That, and I will say this: that this is slept on, man. And I've said it before, but I started making solo episodes versus just interview. And as you know, there's complications with interviews, whether it's rescheduling, which I had to do with you, whether it's tech issues, you know, there's a lot of like different little stressors that go into interviewing. And I believe when you solo podcast, what happens is you realize you don't want to rely on someone else to carry it, right? Like I should be able to storytell on my own. I should be able to convey topics on my own. I should be able to engage the audience on my own and not necessarily just be like, he's going to be the conduit of awesome information for you. Like, of course, that's a good thing. And I'm not saying at all there's anything wrong with interview podcasting, but that's literally what kind of brought me back. I started making solo episodes, and dude, they started doing well. And I was like, real well. And I was like, this is crazy. And then later down the road, I had big name guests that, you know, in the podcast industry, and I'm like, somehow, some way, the solo episodes perform better. And I was like, that's strange. If I didn't go to 54, or if I quit at that moment, like I told you, then it would have been for nothing. I learned everything after that. And no, a lot of people in this industry and doing this thing don't have the patience to do that. So you just really don't know what's on the other side unless you just keep going.
Yeah, I love that. I agree with you in that solo episode need is a large one. And so when I first started doing live, because I started with live, not really recorded like this. This is actually much easier now. Live is,
Yeah, for sure, dude.
Is much more difficult. But I realized that you really do need to have episodes where you just speak to the people. You know, you connect with your audience and people who have come to learn from you, hear your voice, get accustomed to you, you build your brand that way. And it's good to have people on, and that's good, especially if the conversation is good. But like solo episodes are so important for growing your business and for people knowing who you are. Yes.
Yep. Practice also, man. It's also just practice, man. Like practicing how you deliver, how you package a story, where you put inflection, and here, sorry, you got me real riled up right now, man. But like a lot of people, I don't know if you do or not, man, but a lot of people don't listen back to their own episodes. And I'm like, dude, you have to, because if you're bored, your audience is bored, and you got to know. So that's going to help you tremendously. So if you're hearing that, there's your hack for the day.
Yeah, that's true. I love listening to my own episodes.
Good for you, dude.
I love it. I love
Good.
listening. I love listening to the conversations. I know which ones are good. I know which ones are good. And I know
Yes.
which ones are, that was all right. Good. If I could listen back to it and I can enjoy it, I would think that many people could feel the same way, you know?
Agree.
You
Agree.
know?
And at least you're proud of it, right? Like you're like, I'm proud I have that content now. Who cares if it didn't do what I wanted it to do? Maybe it'll hit later down the road. So yeah, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. All right, great. So that's a good introduction to podcasting in general. Let's get more into video podcasting. Let's talk a bit about that because I know that's what your primary expertise is
Mhm.
now, and that's something that you're growing. And so you transition from the podcast as an audio, and I guess the choice that you made to interview local businesses was to facilitate that video podcasting part of it. Yeah.
Not necessarily actually. Like what I wanted to do was prove the concept of being the mayor of your town, and I could get into that in a second. But we really started video podcasting for clients once I realized in one of my sunset podcasts that you had mentioned, it's called NFTs for Newbies. Like we were just putting it on YouTube, and it was really helping us grow our community and our audience. And I just didn't want to do the work or put in the money to have like produce something for YouTube. But now it's absolutely, you cannot ignore it, and I could get into that in a second. But the concept here, the video podcasting, is to do in-person podcasts. It's my wife and I, who's not a podcaster, and an opportunity for me to kind of document that journey and be like, okay, like here's how I set up. Here's how I found someone to video for us. Here's what it's doing for me. I'm able to network with local business people because I'm really weird about making adult friends. So I'm like, I might as well just interview entrepreneurs, stuff like that. So just video, just to me, I just recognized it added so many more elements in audio only, as you know, which is why we're doing this right now. But yes, so there's just a lot of things that I felt could be gained from it versus just the audio only experience, and I had the proof for it. Then I was able to do that with clients, and I saw their audiences grow tremendously. And I was like, this has to be the pivot. This has to be.
Excellent, excellent, good. Because I know many people, they've gotten so accustomed to the format that we're doing now, which is like you jump on one of these video podcasting platforms and you do it this way. But there's some quality to doing it in person that
Oh, yes.
you just can't match. But when I see that, I'm like, oh, this is so great. You have like a set, a studio, a location,
Yes.
and it's different.
The energy is extremely tangible. And I will tell you this, and I don't know if it's the same for you, but whether it's your business or a podcast or interviewing someone, the ability to kind of see the way they sit in their seat, just like where their eyes go, their hand gestures, like all the things, just like I can't explain it. Like I love it. I love just like talking to people generally, even though like I'm an introvert in a lot of ways. But when it comes to podcasting and having the ability to interview people in person, I just think it makes better content. Like there's no escaping it. There's less distractions. Like as two people who are in person, it's just, I don't know how to describe it. It's more intimate. And I always say podcasting is the most intimate form of marketing. But
Yes.
like it's just a different intimate setting. It can't go on forever. So like you just bring it. It just goes fast. And like an hour, it just goes by so much faster. And next thing you know, it's like we legitimately forgot there was cameras. We forgot there was microphones. We got into stories. We got into jokes, and anything could be edited out at the end if you need to. But it's just an absolutely different experience. And I think it is just a way to have a truly formidable connection. And the real reason I do it, man, is because anytime a big guest said yes in the past, I'm like, I have to leave a different impression than everyone else. I have
Mm.
to. I would always say thank you. And I'd be like, I'm coming to you, by the way. And they'd be like, huh? And they're just like, okay. I mean, they're like, if this dude's willing to drive down here or fly down here and bring some stuff and set it up for, an hour long or 45 minutes out of my day, like, so be it. It's more convenient for them, as a matter of fact, dude. So that's what I would do. I'm like, I'm not going to waste this opportunity. And that actually is a true trigger for me for all that stuff. So that's what it was. I was like, I'm not passing up on this opportunity. I need to be memorable to them. It'll be memorable for me. And obviously, if I could, like, the best impression I could leave is also bringing a gift, right? Someone that
Yeah.
busy, bring a gift, leave them a gift, treat their staff well, interact with the people around them. There's so many things, dude. Obviously, I'm passionate about it, but that is the power of in-person video podcasting for sure.
Yeah. And people love that. Like, you bring them a physical gift, you do some research, find out what they like,
Yes.
bring them a nice physical gift. I mean, they're going to remember that. That's,
Yes.
you've established a relationship in a way that you couldn't do if it was virtual. That's good stuff. All right, so let's talk about a bit about your content machine and how that works. I mean, many people have heard the term content machine before, but I want to get what is your definition of a content machine, and then we'll go into some details of how you run yours.
I would say anything that maximizes the output of the content you could put out while minimizing the input of your time. Okay. So that is like the whole premise of this. And that is why I kind of made that show up and shoot model that I discuss into a model we do on the podcasting side as well. Right now, it's very easy for me to go and visit a client and be like, let's go do 12 episodes. You won't see or hear from me for a month. All you know is after that, everything's happening. So the purpose of the content machine, how it should and could work is we'll just use one piece of content as an example, and I will use my local video podcast that I was kind of mentioning. So we go and record the episode. From there, it should get uploaded. And what we use frame.io for reviewing and for editing. I don't know if you do the same, but we'll upload the clips to frame.io. Okay. Our editor or a contractor or whoever it is that you have available. And the reason, by the way, the reason frame.io, it's kind of like, it's a place where you could give real-time feedback, you could review, you could draw on it, you could leave comments and timestamps and all that stuff. But the real reason I say uploading it to there is because uploading it to Google Drive takes forever for us. And I know there's people who do Dropbox as well, but for whatever reason, frame.io, it's like fast. And I'm like, okay. So we go in there. At the timestamp 0, what I'll do is I'll just put something along the lines of remove this, any pre-direction I want to do, I will do. If I want B-roll in certain parts, I'll leave some instructions there. Or if we don't do it on frame, we'll have a brief sheet. And I know I'm kind of explaining like the process, but I think it matters. So from there, what we'll do is we'll get, if it's 2 cameras, it's called a multicam sequence. I'll have them stitch it together and give me a clean multicam sequence. All that means is it's going from you, the camera is going from you to me, or a wide shot to you, or a wide shot to me, whatever it is, nice and clean. From there, I or someone on the team will go in there and do timestamps. And it'll just literally be like start and stop. So start at this word, stop at this word, or whatever it is. And we do as many of those as humanly possible. The reason we do that is the person, a short form editor or someone on your team or you can be like, okay, cool, I got 10 clips out of that, or I got 12 viable things out of that. And the reason it's clean, meaning not edited for YouTube or anything like that, is because if it's repurposed from a long form piece of content that's made for YouTube, it doesn't really hit the same, in my opinion. I think you have to try and be specific to what the short form platforms want. And it's an investment of time or money, one or the other. You're going to be doing that. But okay, so I had the long form piece of content. I got the timestamps for as many clips as possible from it, short form clips. From there, then it goes into long form editing, made for YouTube, the lower third, subscribe here, follow me on Instagram. B-roll, if you don't know what B-roll is, it's just anything that's kind of contextual. If I'm talking about podcasting, there's going to be some stock footage of people in a podcast booth, or maybe it's me, even better if it's actually me in the B-roll. Things that are going to keep attention during that long form YouTube video, something every 5 to 7 seconds, either a transition, B-roll, a zoom in, a zoom out, anything like that. Okay, so now I got YouTube covered. Then the audio person gets it. And we've actually used to have an in-house editor, but we just found a few great people on Upwork, audio engineers, and they're just fantastic. So I'm like, okay, we're just going to stick with you because the turnaround time is unbelievable. So we get all that done. There's your long form piece of content, or there's your long form audio piece of content. As you know, you put it, you schedule it, and you get your show notes and all that other stuff. Now, all that stuff is pretty relevant SEO wise if you care about it. I don't care about SEO that much, but you have all those things. So timestamps, SEO, all that kind of stuff in your description of the episode, tags, any of that stuff. So we've covered short form. You have 10 short form pieces of content. Those could go in those could go in a lot of different places. It could go Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, LinkedIn, like all the places, right? So 10 times whatever. Then you have YouTube, okay? Then you have the long form piece of content. That's the audio piece that's going to go on up to 20 something platforms, okay? So there you got that. And I can't even do the math, but it's a lot. And then you have the written part. You could turn it into articles on LinkedIn. You could turn it into a Medium post. You could put it on your own blog on your website. You have the audio version. So all you do for that is you grab the transcription. If you want, you could plug it into ChatGPT and be like, take this entire transcript and make me a blog article, or make me 4 blog articles based off the different phases of this conversation where we cover different subjects. And there's a freaking content machine, dude. Like that's it. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like what just happened right now? Like that's it. And I'm not saying it's about quantity. Like, oh, wow, you should be so proud that you did all this quantity. You should be proud that you are trying to cater to the different consumption methods of the people who follow you or are going to discover you. And that's all you're doing, man. Like that's all you're doing is trying to be like, if you like to read, I got you covered. If you like short form, I got you covered. If you like to listen, I got you covered. If you like to watch on YouTube, I got you covered. And that to me speaks volumes of what you are trying to do for your audience, not yourself.
Yeah, that's great. You just kind of give a complete breakdown. I like that you started. I'm going to talk about the process. That's good that you spoke about the process, because this is the things people want to hear. They want to know, how does this actually work? I've seen a lot of people say repurpose, 2x, 10x, whatever x. And I don't know how this thing actually works. So that's a great breakdown.
Thank you. Yeah. And I could go deeper, but yeah, I appreciate it.
Also, so tell me, including the time you take to record the podcast, how long does it take to actually do all of that?
So this is extremely timely that you're saying that. We just actually dedicated yesterday that we are going to commit to a 5 business day turnaround for clients. The reason I say that is because of the process. What I did not mention in any of that was the QA process, which matters. Now, the quality assurance process, right? So if the short form comes, I got all the short form clips that the editor uploads to frame.io, and I could hit needs review or approved or anything like that. But I go in there and let's just say I'm talking about, here's 4 ways, here's the 5 best ways to launch your podcast. And I see that the caption or the subtitle says 5 ways to launch your podcast, which has literally just happened the other day. I'm like, okay, so I got to send that back for review. If I see the long form content and let's just say I'm talking about time when I was in the Marine Corps, and they have some stock footage of someone in the Army or something like that, then I'd be like, hold on a second. Like, what are you doing? Like, go the extra mile, go onto my Facebook or go to my Instagram and find me in uniform, or just text me or send me a Slack message. It's like, do you have any pictures from when you were in the Marine Corps? Just to make it that much better, right? Like if I'm talking about that, maybe I'm the only one who will see the difference in that video, but I care, like it matters. So obviously I'm just talking about me. With clients, new levels, new devils, right? So it's like, you got to be willing to do all that stuff. So the quality assurance process, I would say, is what probably takes the longest. How we get around that in terms of trying to reduce that turnaround time to accomplish every single thing I just told you is by really, really taking our time on the very, very first episode that we do for them. On the audio side, it's not going to be there's not a lot of bells and whistles you could do on that. Okay. But on the video side, there are. So we have to absolutely nail, and I mean nail, that first video. Like it doesn't matter how many revisions, no matter how sick you get about like what they come back with. Once you nail it, and if you're good and you've batched your content, or we've batched their content for them, meaning they have 5 or 6 episodes, then we know we could do the next 5. But if we start editing all of those at the beginning, like game over, because they're not going to like anything on all of them. So that's what we do. So 5-day turnaround time for the show description, the timestamps, the YouTube, the scheduling it on YouTube, the chapters, all those things. So that's what I would say it takes. And that's with a team. If it's you solo, probably going to take a little bit longer. So my suggestion for you, if you're solo and you're frugal at the moment or don't have the income to like have anything super highly produced, then batch your content and just really commit. I would say like every Friday, everyone wants to chill on Friday. Well, you know what? Like, where you'll lose your time on a Friday is editing, timestamping, and all that stuff. So commit every Friday from 7 to 12. Whatever it is, and just start working through your backlog little by little. And once you have a backlog of maybe 8 to 10 episodes, then you could launch if you haven't launched yet. And then you have breathing room. And you know how it is, man. Like you never want to be in the position where it's the same week of your podcast that you're supposed to release it and you haven't recorded anything yet. That is like the most stressful thing on earth.
Yeah.
And then you're like, and that's when people quit. That is when people quit. They're like, well, I missed 1 week. Might as well miss another. No one's going to care. And then people just never come back. So that turnaround time, dude, we're obsessed with making that an operation and just systemized as possible. Obviously, we have deliverables, but it's something to pay attention to. But it's a content machine and it will be worth it.
Yeah, that's lovely. Interesting thing is that like so I have like 7 or 8 podcasts recorded, right?
Good. So good.
They're mainly edited. It's just the intros, of course.
Yep.
I have to do the intros for them. I had committed to do one with an interview and one on my own.
Yes, perfect.
I committed to do that. It turns out that I went on some other people's podcasts and they have given me the episodes. I have a couple of kind of turnaround podcasts.
Yep.
This week is interesting because this week is one of the persons who I interviewed had a kind of a time-sensitive thing that they mentioned in the podcast.
Yes.
So I'm trying to get them in because I don't want to wait too long to put it out and what they've said becomes irrelevant.
Totally.
Right? Do you find often that when you're doing podcasts, that is something that comes up, like the person you're interviewing has requests and you have to adjust in order to make that happen?
Sometimes, and I think like you have a very good kind of questionnaire for your show. So it's like, okay, like you need me to input a couple things. For people who do that, I think that's a really good opportunity to discover that well in advance and be like, okay, wait a second, like we're scheduled for November 10th and it's currently October, whatever. Like, am I going to have enough time to do that? How are we going to do this? So yeah, I think it's something to pay attention to. Unfortunately, there's just times, well, if it comes to promoting something of theirs, book launch, release of a new show, a giveaway or anything like that, we will try and accommodate, but I just believe the more variation there is, the more inefficiency there is. So there's been times where we've had someone be on a show, especially this local one, where they're talking about, the shrimp festival or blah, 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 and to come see us. And I'm like, edit that out. Like, it's too late now. Like, there's nothing we can do. So it really, really depends. But as you grow, I think if you could accommodate that, I think you're on the right track. If you could accommodate it, they will remember that because, they are hoping that your audience is going to benefit from their knowledge, but also their audience could look more into what they got going on. So, best case scenario, people don't have anything to promote, to be honest. But yeah, when it comes to dates or anything that's time sensitive, I believe it's totally at the podcast host discretion. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer.
Right. And with that in mind, what's the recommended cadence for people when they come to you? Do you tell them, well, business podcast should be once a week or once every other week, or is it really very customizable?
It's customizable. I would say certainly over 4 million podcasts like in directories worldwide. Okay. So there's 4 million. I would say now it's probably closer to 5 million. 300,000 of those podcasts, which is probably higher now as well, are only publishing once a month. Okay. Once a month, which is ridiculous. That just means and I was just looking at an Apple stat page. I think there's 50,000 podcasts added in the last 90 days to Apple Podcast Directory and 37 that left Apple Podcast Directories, meaning like Apple's like, it's been inactive for 2 years. So we're kind of kicking it out. There's as much as getting it added, there's a lot of people falling off as well. But if you really look at what I just said, 300,000 out of maybe almost 5 million are publishing once a month. That's like the bare minimum. Once a month, as you know, is not significant at all. Half of that 300,000, that's about people who are publishing once a week. And I think it's actually closer to like 169,000 is the last stat I heard. So 169,000 podcasts are publishing once a week out of, the almost maybe 5 million that exist. What that means is you have an absolute ridiculous opportunity depending on your niche and your skills and your cadence, to record, to publish. So I would say once a week at a minimum, put you in a very, very good position. We have people who want to work with us and they're like, we want to do 3 a week or 2 a week. I'm like, chill. Like, let's even see if you like this. Like, I don't even let them try and invest in all the greatest gear because you don't know. Like we said, you don't know if you're going to make it to episode 7. You don't know if you're going to make it to episode 50. So once a week is a great start. What you're doing, I recommend all the time. And I think it's fantastic that you're doing that. I think a hybrid method, and we like, like a Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday, one with a guest, one with just you. And the guest ones, are going to be a little bit longer, which means the ones with you solo could be a little bit shorter. We love 2 a week. We think that is just fantastic. It's great for downloads. Now, if you are at 1 a week and you want to jump up to 2 a weeks, you got to wait till that first that 1 a week one starts to like have what I call a heartbeat. Like you start to see the peaks a little bit, like when you're looking at the analytics. As long as those peaks are starting to get higher, push it. Right after that, absolutely push it to 2. If not, like just keep going, and you're gonna have to wait to see like what actually pops or why anything is not popping. For our best clients, 3 a week, and they're all solo. But it's solo, and then what you said, I forget the turnaround power. I've not used that term before, but yeah. So what happens is these people are extremely sought after, highly sought after. So they appear on a lot of people's podcasts. So we gather those, we re-edit those, we put a custom intro on there and all the other stuff, and those become bonus episodes. So we do bonus episodes, and those will be like on the weekend or something like that. You know what? Those get almost the same amount of downloads. And I will tell you, one client the first client we ever did that with, we took them from 124,000 downloads a month to now they're doing 1.5 million downloads a month. And I mean, like, now don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying it's just us. These people are absolutely amazing creators, but all it was the uptick in the cadence and recognizing that the statistics are telling you just do a little bit more. Just do a little bit more, but you got to have a heartbeat, man. You got to have a heartbeat on your show before you go and pull the trigger on more.
Oh, that's great. That's great information. That's great insight. So make it consistent first. You have your heartbeat, your steady heartbeat, and that's like the peaks and the valleys in between the cadence. And once you get that, then you can start to add more to that. Mm-hmm. So stabilize first.
Yeah.
And then you can put some more on it. You can add more content to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just one addition to that, just to be clear, that could be a different format. So like if you were just doing interviews and you were stabilized and then the peak started getting a little bit higher, that's your opportunity. You would think, I just need to do more of that. It's like, wait a second, like explore a different format. Maybe you could have a news show about content. Like, hey, every Thursday, I'm going to give you the latest and greatest on what TikTok is saying and what Instagram is saying, because it's always changing. News podcasts can do really well, but you could do, where you're answering, it's Q&A. It's Q&A on Thursday, Q&A Thursdays, right? Like, here's some comments I got. I'm going to answer these specifically. What do I do if XYZ? No matter whatever it is that you tack on, it can be more of the same, but I think it's a really good time to experiment, and that diversity might just make your audience even happier. So that's a good opportunity right there. The average podcast length right now, I think is now down to 34 minutes an episode. Now you might be like, but wait a second, some of these people, the most famous people we know, and the Joe Rogans of the world, Jocko's and them, they're like doing like 2-3 hours. I'm like, well, no one's binging that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I believe if you can be quick and concise with your information, the same way people consume a ton of content in 1 hour by scrolling on Instagram, if you give someone the opportunity to get some good, witty, educational, entertaining, or whatever content in 15 minutes, and they're at the gym or they're on their half-hour commute, they have an opportunity to do 2 episodes. Yeah. And I just think that's a favor to everybody, man. Sometimes it's just too long. Sometimes if someone opens up a podcast and they see 1 hour and 29 minutes, they're like, they already know in their head, they're like, I ain't making it. And if they stop halfway on the way to work, they probably are not going to listen on the way back, because now they're exhausted. They just want to listen to music and have the windows open or who knows what. So that's how I look at it.
I tend to listen to podcasts when I exercise, when I go out on the road, I walk and different things. And the whole idea is that at the end of that, I had to have gotten something, because I get a lot of ideas. I send voice notes to myself while listening to the podcast. Like, this is a great idea for this. And so the idea about this podcast in particular is that you can listen to it on a lunchtime. That's the whole idea. Yes. So it has to be under 45 minutes.
Yes, that makes sense.
Ideal is 30 to 35 minutes ideal. It has to be under 45 minutes.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So we're coming in for a landing here. Could you tell the people where they can find you online?
Absolutely. So I'm on Instagram, and here's a funny thing, everyone. I delete my Instagram every day and turn it and put it back on my phone around 3 o'clock for a couple hours, and then delete it again. But I'm on there. I do that because I call myself doom scrolling, man. I just want to be honest with you guys. But just a tip. It's worked really well for me. But yeah, Instagram at Rich Cardona _, and then LinkedIn Rich Cardona as well, and then YouTube channels Rich Cardona. But yeah, I absolutely. Please, if you have any questions, please let me know you came from this podcast, because I will expedite an answer, or I will make sure I engage immediately, because I've had such a good time on the Useful Content podcast. So I'll make sure I get back to you if you have any questions whatsoever.
Beautiful. Lovely, lovely. So it's great talking with you, Rich. Great talking about video podcasting. Great talking about your content machine and hearing some of the things that brought you from video production into now video podcasting. And I love that you're wearing red. Those who are on the audio podcast can't see that he's wearing red, but he's wearing my colors, which is very nice as well. So it's great to have you on. And thanks everyone for joining us for the Useful Content Podcast. Useful Content Classroom dismissed. And we're clear.
All right.
Love
that was excellent, man. You're a very, very good host, man.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Oh man, I'll have to make a LinkedIn post about it. Yeah, I'll actually do that right after this. Yeah, man. Very, very good questions. So smooth with everything. I mean, it was great. And just even at the end, like when you're like coming in for landing, like, I don't know, little stuff like that matters. I think you're doing a fantastic job.
Thanks, I appreciate that, Rich, so much. The Useful Content Podcast is brought to you and produced by Relate Studios. You can see the work we do on our website at relatestudios.com. If you like what you've heard on the podcast today, please follow and come back in 2 weeks for another great episode. And if you want to get more useful content in between that, you can follow me, Juma Bannister, on LinkedIn and on Twitter. We all know it's still Twitter. See you soon in the Useful Content Classroom.